Hello and welcome to the Steampunk Show. I'm Ryan Constable.
And I'm Saf Fraser. Coming up in today's show, we explore the history of steampunk.
We play a very intense game of Dueling.
We also discover the steampunk art scene.
And we also find out what the future will be for the steampunk culture.
But before we start, why don't you follow us at Steampunk Show TV on Twitter or search the Steampunk Show on Facebook. You can also join in with the conversation using the hashtag Steampunk Show.
Let's begin.
Now, I bet you're wondering what steampunk really is. By definition, steampunk is a genre of science fiction which features an alternate historical setting, typically using steam-powered machinery rather than advanced technology.
Whoa, what do you mean by steam-powered machinery?
Well, steam-powered machines are vehicles which use steam power rather than electricity, like airships and land vehicles. These vehicles were inspired by the Industrial Revolution during the 19th century. Authors took inspirations from trains and automobiles, adding their own sci-fi twist.
These authors created dime novels, which were small stories for a very small price. Dime novels were prominent during the Victorian era, with authors such as Edward Ellis and Jules Verne writing about futuristic elements within their stories, proving to be very popular at the time. Novels such as 10,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Journey to the Centre of the Earth proved to be a huge inspiration for the steampunk culture, as they would follow heroes discovering new creatures and going on grand adventures.
These books were heavily influenced by the time the authors were living in. The British Empire was expanding rapidly with huge social and political changes, which kick-started the Industrial Revolution during the 19th century.
Well, I'm certainly no historian, so we called in Carl Bell, an expert at the University of Portsmouth, to tell us more about the Industrial Revolution and what else could have influenced the steampunk culture.
I'm Dr. Carl Bell. I'm a reader in cultural history at the University of Portsmouth.
Thank you so much for coming in today, Carl.
Thank you for having me.
What is the Industrial Revolution?
It begins in the 18th century, and there's gradually an increase in the amount of industrial production that's going on, the application of machinery to an industrial process, which allows people to produce more and faster at a time when the population is growing. And it leads to various changes. It leads to the development of factories. And because these large machines have to be housed in a particular place. And it also leads to the development of cities. So you get urbanization taking place at the same time. And it's largely led by the northwest of England, or Lancashire, up in the north in Yorkshire. Originally it starts off in kind of rural areas. It starts off where you've got water, fast-flowing rivers, water wheels, this type of thing to power mills. And you've got charcoal and things like that to burn in iron foundries. But increasingly, there's a shift towards coal, there's a shift towards steam power. And once you've got those things, you need to be near coal deposits, and therefore the Midlands, the Northeast, parts of South Wales, all of those start to lead the Industrial Revolution. And yet, the downside of that is that there's huge pollution. There are numbers of workers coming in to find work in the cities as agriculture no longer needs them anymore, because that's also improving. And it leads to slums, it leads to rising tensions, social tensions. And that's something that will sort of feed into steampunks pick up on, actually, and that kind of literature in terms of it's about punk, it's about protest as much as about the fancy gadgets and all the brass and goggles stuff.
Do you think the Industrial Revolution still plays a big part in today's society?
It does, but it's not the same Industrial Revolution. It's not the Industrial Revolution that you see in the 18th and 19th century. In many ways, industrialization is kind of become hidden behind the very slick technology that we all use and manufacture. I think industrialization is very much still in existence, and it will continue to develop as we kind of progress with our technology. But also the social problems that go with industrialization, they may be more hidden, but they're still very much there as well.
Have you read any of the books by H.G. Wells or even K.W. Jeter?
Yeah, they sort of become the link, I guess, between Victorian industrialization and steampunk, really, in that they are the sort of the predecessors. What you've got is people living in the time period already fantasizing about future technologies. So you've got Jules Verne and the Nautilus and the kind of the power that comes from this special submarine and the way in which it can allow him to basically explore the sea as if it was going to another planet. So it's kind of the early science fiction stuff. You've got H.G. Wells with Time Machines, War of the Worlds, Dr. Moreau, all these kind of things. So it's they're kind of dealing with contemporary issues, but they're also fantasizing about sort of technologies and science.
Would you consider yourself to be a steampunk?
I'm very interested in steampunk culture, particularly steampunk literature and sort of film and comic book art.
Can you tell us more about the Asylum Festival coming up?
Yeah, the Asylum Festival is the largest European steampunk festival, annual steampunk festival. I think they get around 15,000 steampunks turn up every August bank holiday. They descend on Lincoln, in Lincolnshire, and they completely transform it, and it's a really great sort of buzz to the event. They do all different types of things. There's kind of parades, there's kind of tea dueling, which is a thing that steampunks do. There's kind of talks and workshops and presentations.
The history is very important to the genre. It plays a huge part in the culture.
Steampunk has become very dominant within pop culture, leading to movies, games, and TV shows, all taking inspiration from the genre. Movies like Edward Scissorhands, Hugo, and the recent adaptations of Sherlock Holmes all incorporate the essence of steampunk.
It's everywhere.
It sure is. And in today's modern society, there are many people inspired by the phenomenon by dressing in extravagant clothing, creating art pieces, and meeting up with fellow steampunkers.
At these meetups, games such as tea dueling and nerf dueling are played. The reason why steampunks play tea dueling is because during the Victorian and Edwardian era, tea was used for socialising, so this is a good way to bring all steampunks together.
Luckily, we got the opportunity to go and film some of the best steampunks in Gosport and see what their monthly meetings involve.
For those who don't know about it, what is steampunk?
In my words, okay, and I say that because if you ask different people, you would get different answers. My point of view is that steampunk comes down to the future that the Victorians never had. So we're trying to recreate a Victorian vision of the future, where the internal combustion engine never happened and electricity never happened. Everything still relies on steam and clockwork, and everyone is still well-mannered and well-dressed. And technology is a bit more interesting than it is today, yes.
So where does steampunk originate from?
It started out as a bit of a joke apparently about 30 years ago between science fiction writers. You've probably heard of cyberpunk. It's a sort of extenuation of that. Let's look at what a punk movement might have looked like in Victorian times. So it started with the literary press amongst science fiction writers.
And how long has the Gosport Steampunk Society been running for?
A year exactly. A year exactly, yes.
So how often do you meet up and what do you get up to in the Steampunk Society?
What we have here is a convivial. We meet up once a month and it's called a convivial, which sounds much nicer than a meeting. Yep, and it sort of it embodies what we do, which is socialise basically. We do lots of interesting side things like the tea dueling, which you've seen, and the nerf dueling. And there's also art and literature involved. But generally speaking, it's this monthly convivial is our mainstay.
How did you personally come about steampunk?
I've always liked the ethos, and sort of growing up, I was into H.G. Wells and Jules Verne and that kind of author, Edgar Rice Burroughs, and this is sort of an extrapolation of that. And it came to the point where I thought it would be fun to do that. I've seen people do it, I want to do that too. So we decided to set up the Gosport Society so that other people could do it with us, as it were.
Out of curiosity, what is your favourite H.G. Wells book?
Oh gosh, probably The Time Machine, I think, yeah.
So do you think steampunk is becoming more popular in this area?
Based on our own findings, we've grown from the society started off with 3 of us, wondering how many people were going to turn up to our very first meeting, and now we've got 350 members. So it's thankfully they're not all here tonight. When we have a convivial, we have about 40, 50 people. But because of social media, we can still interact with people from all over the country who feel like they want to base themselves with us, which is lovely.
And how well do you think you guys cover steampunk in the media?
In the media, it's we try and push it in the Portsmouth Evening News, for example, local television. So that's Solent. We've been on television. We've been on South Today, and local radio. So we try and push it as much as we can. I think the media are just discovering steampunk, and I think that may well change in the future.
You know what? I really enjoyed that trip. I never knew much about steampunk before, but now I feel like I'm one of them.
It was an exciting evening and overall fantastic experience. I may even join you on that one, Ryan.
As you saw in the VT, at many gatherings, games take place to showcase who stands strong amongst the group. One game which caught our eye is Dueling. Dueling is a game that is typically played by steampunks, which has been around in the UK for many years. It is played when a tiffin party is present.
Wait, what's a tiffin party?
Well, a tiffin party is when 3 or more steampunks gather together to create a group. The referee is known as a tiffin master, who ensures everything runs smoothly.
So, if you have a group of 4 people, anyone can play it. That's the net game I'm playing with my flatmates.
Yes, it's very simple to play. I mean, even our producer played, and she won.
Now, there's an idea. Why don't we have a go now?
What, in here?
Yeah, well, why not? We've got our own mugs, and we've even got our very own tiffin master, Jebba.
Woo.
So guys, the rules are very simple. First of all, tea must be used. Secondly, the choice of biscuit is yours. So in the studio today, we have some regular plain biscuits. Thirdly, each competitor must have the same size cup. When dunking the biscuit, it must be very close to the surface. And finally, I will count to 5. And on that count of 5, you must raise the biscuits in the air and eat them. So whoever secures a clean nom first, then they will be the winner.
Well, let's play then.
There you go, if you take your biscuit first.
I won't lie, I'm quietly confident, girls.
I'm quite confident.
Right, we'll see. Ready, on the count of 3.
cheat.
1, 2, 3, dunk. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bring them out.
Oh, it's like steaming.
Doesn't look like your biscuit was dunked at all, to be honest, on that one.
Do we have a little bit of cheating going on here?
no.
Already,
Mine's wobbling.
round 1, and you're cheating already.
Oh, is yours going?
I think yours is.
Oh, clean nom. Next second round, we'll see who gets this one.
What a terrible start.
It was like steaming when we brought it out.
Mm.
We've got very hot tea in the
Very
studio
hot tea.
today. Very hot. So 1,
Put
2,
your eager.
3, dunk.
Unbelievable.
2, 3, 4, 5. Bring them out.
Oh.
I think, see, I've taken your technique of cheating this
There we
time.
go. We've got a
can
similar amount of dunking going on here.
There you go. Oh,
Oh, mine's
yours is
a bit
already
wobbly.
going a bit.
Oh.
There we go.
Look at that. Back in the
Another
winning
round.
ways.
Another round. So we're even on the points now, I think.
Nice biscuits.
This is one of the tastiest games I've ever played in my
I
life.
know.
It's brilliant.
So 1, 2, 3, dunk.
I like your steampunky.
Yeah, I
3,
know.
4,
Get up, by the way.
5. Bring them out. Oh, you want about my penny?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
very
nice.
good.
I picked it especially for this tea
Can I
duel.
borrow
It's
it
my favourite
afterwards?
one. Maybe.
Mine's not looking great.
This one seems like a solid round.
Oh no, I see Saf's starting to wilt a bit. It's like a wilted
it's-
flower. Look at that.
It's gone.
A wilted flower.
We have some biscuits, so we might as well finish them. Go on.
Let's do another round and see if I can win it.
Yeah.
Alright.
Have you won a round yet? Oh yeah, you won the first one.
Have you got one yet?
But you did
I won
cheat.
the first. No, I didn't cheat.
1, 2, 3, dunk. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bring them out.
The structural integrity of these biscuits is unbelievable. Look at that. Look how strong mine is.
Oh, I just made mine.
Mine exudes confidence.
Oh, I think it's going. I think we might have a winner, and it looks like it might be Ryan. There we go.
Now, join us after the ad break where we explore the fashion, art, and the future of steampunk. Stay tuned.
Welcome
welcome back. Before the break, we saw Ryan take the crown as Tea Dueling champion. If you want to take part in Tea Dueling and play at home, we'll place the rules on Twitter and Facebook, so make sure you take a look.
Now, the outfits steampunks wear are a massive part of their culture. There is often quite a lot of competition for who is the best dressed. Now, speaking of fashion, Saf, may I ask what you're wearing today, as you look incredibly extravagant?
Well, today I'm wearing my Victorian style skirt in a lovely colour of pinky purple and the jacket as well. And I've got this little fascinator. What about you, Ryan?
Well, I'm wearing my brown coat, my top hat with my chrome goggles.
Ryan, did you not understand the dress code?
I did. Look, I've got a hat on and it's better than yours anyway.
No, Ryan, there's a little more to it than just wearing a top hat. I think I'm definitely better dressed than you.
Well, how about we put it to a vote then? To let us know who you think is better dressed, tweet us at Steampunk Show using the hashtag StylishSaf or TrendyRyan.
The fashion is based on Victorian style aesthetic, but it's heavily influenced by steampunk fiction. Many wear the clothing in everyday circumstances, but very often the attire is saved for special occasions, like weddings and gatherings. The fashion usually combines mechanical accessories, such as hats and goggles, to truly give that Victorian sci-fi feel.
Another point to consider about steampunk is that some individuals have multiple personalities when it comes to their outfits. So this means that for every outfit they own which is steampunk related, they will have a different persona depending on what they are wearing.
So Ryan, tell me, what would be the typical outfit for men to wear?
Well, the men would typically wear suits with vests, top hats and long straight coats, which completes the Victorian style. The men would aspire to dress like a Victorian age explorer mixed with a sci-fi twist. But what about the women?
Well, the women would usually dress as air pilots and explorers, but sometimes would wear corsets and elegant gloves. But what we do have to remember is that fashion is not just about clothes we wear. It can be body modifications, makeup, or a host of other aspects. Although clothes play a huge role, fashion is what you make of it.
When it comes to body modifications, some people not only dress up in the steampunk attire, they also get tattoos to show their passion for the genre, as well as even some piercings, others even having beard rings for their facial hair. When it comes to how they style their hair, it is all dependent on their persona. While some have a simple design with a hat or cap, others go for a more wild approach with their hair, having their hairstyle incorporate their costume.
A question that I believe is on all of our minds is, where can we get these clothes from? So Ryan, say I wanted to become a steampunk, where in Pompey is the best place to shop?
Well, you could use the modern way by searching online for vintage items, or maybe you can find a bargain in your charity shop around your area, but it could take a while. But here in Pompey there are numerous shops to suit your needs, shops like Angel Clothing and South Coast Emporium.
As you can see, fashion plays a huge role for steampunks, and like some fashion trends, steampunks clothing is also influenced by art.
The art scene has an abundance of steampunk aesthetic. Artists were inspired by authors like Jules Verne as they wanted to visualize the images they read in the novels.
The art comes in many different shapes and sizes, from modern computers and television sets to blend in with a Victorian theme, to art pieces showing an alternative future.
It contains a range of Victorian influences, but shows a sense of modernization through fashion or the Victorian landscape. It often resembles what Victorian dreamers would imagine the future to be like.
We were lucky enough to interview James Waterfield, an artist whose work revolves around steampunk influence. Take a look.
James, thank you for joining me today. So I'd like to start with where you found your inspiration from.
The past. So looking at classic kind of movies, classical kind of art, kind of sort of like things that are classical. If you kind of like look at the cherub I've got behind me, which is a kind of a modern, more modern take on a kind of classical idea of cherubs, you know, the kind of things of winged skulls, kind of sort of like mixing up the past with the kind of present.
How long have you been an artist for?
Well, I'm 50 now, so I've been an artist ever since I was a kid, and I actually did do my foundation course at this university.
What materials do you use for your sculptures?
I use a multitude of materials for my sculptures. This one is actually made out of bronze, so it's the same as a classical sculpture. It's used a process called lost wax. So I got a real baby doll, plastic rubber baby doll, and I cast it in wax. You then make a mould over the wax, and then molten bronze is poured in, and it's obviously put a pattern over the top to make it look like a classical sculpture.
How big a part does art play in the steampunk society?
I think the creativity of the kind of steampunk scene is kind of a lot what separates it from other kind of scenes that you kind of allude to. So the big thing about steampunk is it's very much a do-it-yourself kind of scene, a bit kind of like punk, or that's where the punk ethic comes, the do-it-yourself ethic comes from. But very few steampunks buy all their clothes off the peg. Everybody I know in the steampunk scene is customising and making their own things, whether it's they're designing things for their own hats, with the girls making their own dresses, their own kind of like outfits. Everybody kind of mix and matches it. So I don't think I know a single person who buys their clothes just off the peg. Everybody's customised and making their own. And with that comes the kind of bands and the music that kind of you associate with steampunk and whole steampunk kind of scene, and the kind of like the decor that people have.
Do you see a lot of art that's similar to this when you go into mainstream galleries?
I can think off the top of my head, really sort of like Sgt. Pepper, which was created by the Beatles, which used an artist called Peter Blake, who kind of used a collage, lots of old Victorian pictures he used, and he made this collage. So that, and certainly the music, was the kind of starting of steampunk for me. So when you go into an art gallery and you see what kind of artist, certainly I would think Hans-Rudi Geiger, H.R. Geiger, you'd recognise from the Alien films, but his art is definitely that kind of mix between the past and the future. And lately, I would definitely say Damien Hirst is kind of getting into this kind of idea of mixing the past up. So he's just lately, you know, I mean, this is nearly 30 years old, this sculpture, but he's doing something quite similar, where he's getting very kind of like, he's making classical sculptures, but about modern objects, and then, you know, making them look like they're very, very old and classical kind of sculptures.
And finally, does your artwork appeal to a certain type of person or audience?
I like to think it appeals to everybody, but I know it doesn't. So I think steampunk people are kind of like a bit more off the wall. So if they're a bit more off the wall, then they like things that I do a bit more off the wall. That's not the kind of standard things that you'd find. Also, I think with the steampunk scene is a kind of reaction against almost kind of modern living. So where you would get the idea of kind of what is very minimal and modern and kind of plastic and kind of very clean lines, steampunk's about kind of the complete opposite of that. Everything is very sort of like riveted, pipes, tubes, cogs. Everything looks very kind of alludes to a past. It's kind of the idea of what happens if Victorian society was advanced in technology. So it's kind of the world of H.G. Wells and Conan Doyle and Jules Verne, as if they carried on and progressed to now.
Wow, that art was amazing.
It certainly was. The culture encourages its members to embrace their identity through art. From paintings to 3D models, it's all down to you.
We have some tips for you if you want to make your own art. A good way to start off is look at the materials. Typical materials to work with is brass, copper, leather and wood, as they were used for Victorian construction.
Also, do try to avoid plastics. This is because plastics were invented in the modern era, so avoid all materials invented outside the Victorian period.
Accessories which would be a good addition to your artwork should be cogs, gears, chains and other industrial type objects.
And most importantly, it should all be based on a Victorian fantasy.
So once you've let your creative side run wild, why not send your pictures in to us using the hashtag SteampunkShowTV?
So Saf, we've looked at the past and the present for steampunk, but what does the future hold for steampunk culture?
Well, the future looks very bright. I mean, steampunk is making its way into all mediums of culture. I read an article that noted that since 2010, more than 20 major department stores and other retailers had become steampunk savvy, showing that it's increasingly becoming a more mainstream part of society.
So it is safe to say steampunk is destined to enter mainstream society and will continue to grow in popularity in the science fiction world. We see evidence of this through the music.
That is true. The music is so diverse with many styles and genres, which link to the steampunk setting. The only consistent steampunk theme found in music is a link to the 19th to 20th century, whether it be using a particular instrument or sample.
Exactly. You know, I think we need to start a society right here at the University of Portsmouth.
Well, we will, but first we need to wrap up the show.
Oh yeah, well unfortunately we have come to the end of our show. We've explored a lot and what a great show it's been.
So, what was your favourite part, Ryan?
Well, I particularly found Dueling to be very fun and will definitely be playing it in the future. But what about you, Saf?
Well, I very much enjoyed it as well. I liked to see how it evolved from the 19th century to being a prominent part of society today.
Now, remember to follow us for everything steampunk on Twitter at Steampunk Show TV and search the Steampunk Show TV on Facebook. Now, are you going to be wearing any of the steampunk clothes out and about?
No, I don't think I will, probably.
Now, we hope you've learned a lot about steampunk culture, what it's all about, as well as seeing where steampunk is going and what the future holds for it.
Anyway, it's time to go now. Thank you for watching. I'm Saf Fraser.
And I'm Ryan Constable.
Goodbye.
Bye.